In this video, I want to cover a few recent feature additions to the Pose tool in 3D Coats as of 4.9. To do so, I'll scroll down to the Adjust section, click on the Pose tool. Here at the top of the Tool Options panel, you can choose your selection mode. I'll stick with Line, and I'm going to isolate the object that I want to work with, although you can work with multiple objects. To do so, I would check through all volumes, but in this case, I want to work with just one object. So I will select this one, and to isolate it, I want to hold down the Alt key and click on the visibility icon. I'm going to go into an orthographic view and some type of a side view. Zoom in. The first new feature is the ability to snap your selection to a specific angle that you designate here. You could change that to 30, 45, whatever you prefer, but the default value is 15, and that should work well in most situations. What this allows me to do is make a perfect selection vertically, horizontally, or any increment in between that I set here. So I'm going to click and drag. When I click, it sets the first point, and then I can set the direction by positioning my second point here. Everything beyond this point will be 100% selected. So I'll release my mouse and cursor. And there you have it. I'm going to clear the selection. And I would advise working on a proxy if you have a very dense model, which this one is. So with the proxy slider, I'm going to use Decimate. And I'm going to drag it to about this level to where I'm stepping down from 18 million to about 2 million. All I have to do is click on the Cache to Disk icon. Okay, so now let's look at our second feature, and that is the ability to create polygroup selections. In this case, let's say I want to select the ear area here and create a polygroup from it. So let me come out of orthographic view. What I want to do is switch to Paint Select. All right, now if we want to store this as a poly group, we can choose Store Selection to Layer. In some sense, this is similar to the Save Selection, Load Selection. However, the Save Selection and Load Selection is very limited because it relies upon mesh order. So if you make changes to a mesh, you're going to lose that selection. Meaning, if I store the selection on a proxy, I'm going to lose it when I uncache, again, because I've completely changed the mesh order. Whereas this new feature will store the selection to a layer using Vertex Paint. Okay, I'll go ahead and click Store Selection to Layer. You'll notice how it's created a new layer, and I'll clear the selection, and you'll see what it's done here. It's basically converted it to Vertex Paint, and it's named it accordingly. So if I were to go and select the jaw area now and choose the same option, it would create a new one and store it as polygroup 3. I can name that underscore ear. I can hide it. Another thing that you can do is not only utilize this as a pose selection, you can also convert this to a free selection at any point. To do that, we would right-click and choose Freeze Painted Pixels. Since I'm in the Pose tool, it just converts it to a pose selection. If you have a free selection on a model for any purpose and you step into the Pose tool, it will become a pose selection. I'll hit Control D to deselect, just like I would in Photoshop. I'll hide that, and on this layer, let's say I created a free selection in the nose area here. I normally would turn symmetry on, but for now it'll be fine for demonstration purposes. You can also uncheck ignore back faces and just use something like a freeform lasso. That way it will select all the way through. In the freeze menu, I'll tear it off and place it in the viewport where I need. And within this menu, you have several options to modify your selection. But the point I want to make here is as soon as I go into the pose tool, you see how that's converted it to a pose selection. If I clear the pose selection, the freeze selection will also be cleared. If I leave the selection active and step out of the pose tool, the freeze selection remains. I'll hit Control D to clear the mask. Okay, so I'm going to look at another method. This time I'll step into the paint workspace to use the paint tools in order to create a selection. Again, I'll just uncheck ignore back faces and freeform lasso. You can also hit the E key to bring the panel to you. In this case, again, I'm just going to drag select to paint. If I want to use this for the purposes of creating a poly group with paint, then I want to uncheck depth and glossiness and just use color. So now I can double click this and choose snout, poly group, name it however you please. Again, I can create a freeze selection from it at any point. Freeze painted pixels. In the freeze menu, you can access even more options here in the paint workspace, but let's invert the selection. It uses the same hotkey that you would use in Photoshop, Control-Shift-I. You can also smooth it. You can sharpen it as well. I want to hold down the hotkey combination, Control-Shift-I, to invert the selection. Once again, I'll go in to the scope workspace under the pose tool. Let's go ahead and clear the selection. Just using the paint information, I can pick selection from layer. So I'll click here and click here. So as you can see, there are a couple different methods that you could use to create a poly group using paint selection in 3D Coat. And that's going to conclude this look at the new features in 3D Coat's Pose tool as of 4.9. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.